Okay guys, I'm doing a video on my pressure tanks and my pressure switch underneath the house. This is what I put in myself a few years back, about 9 years ago, when I helped put the house in. Just now cutting my system back on, checking it out to make sure it was cutting on and off right. So I've got it set about 60 pound to cut off. When your pressure switch cuts back off, when it reaches up to about 60 pound, you'll see these points go apart. And it should be kicking off. Well, I got it set higher than that, I think. Unless that gauge is wrong. Wow, so I've got mine actually set on about 75 pounds on my gauge, but the reason I've done that is because I've got an outside spigot that I use a lot, and I wanted pressure. I wouldn't go over that, but I think I got it set around 70 pounds or 75 pounds. If you got a older home, I would not do that, because I've got PEX pipe and all that stuff's brand new pipe. It holds together good. My tanks I may have to change later on. The points on my pressure switch, don't know if you can see it or not, they're a little bit burnt, and this is what I was talking about. If they get too burnt, they'll start sticking. And these kind of tanks, if you got the system completely drained down, you should have 28 pounds of air in these tanks, and these are 20 gallon tanks, are equivalent to 20-gallon tanks. They make all different kind of name brand tanks, but there's only so many of them that I trust, so many of them that I'd put in. Or some of them it's got plastic bottoms, which these are getting old now. See the rust, it's rusting that bottom out. If you buy plastic ones and these things ever fill up with water, they'll collapse, and when they collapse, they'll bend plumb over and fall, and then it'll break your pipes and you'll have water going everywhere. But I've got a voltage meter. If you ever want to check the voltage on this, you put it over on volts and put it over on power, and you should be reading, let me get it on here, you should be reading about 230 volts. That's just 234, so that's still okay. And then the amps, I can't get the meter on it out here. I mean, I could if I moved stuff around, but that's what you want to see on the power side. And on the middle, when the points are open, you're not going to receive anything. So as soon as the pressure switch cuts on, it's about 38. I mean, that's about 40 some pounds right now. It'll kick on about maybe 38 pounds. But I can also manually kick it in back here on this switch. There's a little lever back here that you can push down, and I can kick it back in. So the pump's running now. So when the pump's running, it should, if it's doing what it should be doing, even with the water running in the house, you see that gauge going up? That gauge will go all the way up to where you've got the pressure switch set at. Normally a pressure switch, I said, is set between 30 and 50 and 40 and 60. You can go up on the pressure some, like I did on this one, but I wouldn't do it too much, because the more you do that, the more that these bladders inside these tanks are going to stretch. Like I said, this might trip somebody out, me having it at 70 some pounds on here, but that's what I like, about 70 pounds pressure, and that's on my system. So that way, when I get in the shower or whatever, I'm not lacking for water pressure. So if you're going to put a pressure switch on, put a brass nipple on it. Then you've got a faucet here with an anti-siphon on it. What this does is, if you put a hose on this and you was to accidentally throw the hose down in chemicals, it won't let the water siphon back into if it goes back towards the well. That's just a protected device. Same as this one. I probably should have had a relief valve on this system somewhere, but I just put another spigot on this side because at the time I don't think I either had a relief valve or didn't put one on it. Then I've got my cutoff valve. This is actually going to the house. So this pipe right here runs all the way down. I've got it teed off, and I put two pressure tanks side by side each other. Normally these tanks would go like on a mobile home or a single wide. The only reason I did not put a bigger pressure tank in here is I did not have the room for it. That's why I doubled up on it. The pump that I've got in here is a 3/4 5, and it probably pulls about 7 or 8, right at 7, 8 amps. And that's where this comes in. If I could get this meter on it, I would open this up, stick it around the middle wire that goes to the pump, which I could use the white wire or the black wire in the middle. That's the pump wires going out to the well. And put this over onto amps, and it will show you 7 amps or whatever the pump will draw. That's what it should show. If it starts going up to 20, 30, 40 amps and it's kicking the breaker or it's kicking off, more than likely the pump's bad, it's shot. So that's what tells me that you're going to start pulling a pump. But if I was to come out here and check the power, and I didn't have power on each side or the middle or anything, I'd start looking at the power going from here to the house, because you should have voltage here. If you don't have voltage here at the pressure switch, you need to go to your breaker panel box and check and see if you've got a trip breaker and go from there. If the breaker is tripped, if you had lightning happening at your house and you didn't have no water and you came down and you checked this and there wasn't no power on it, then more than likely maybe your breaker got hit, and go from there. So I'm going to wrap it up here and put the lid back on it. I may have to change these tanks. As long as it's still working right for right now, I'm okay. It's been 9 years. The tanks are still cutting off and on like they should. The switch is still okay. It's a little burnt. I may wait about another year unless it just starts giving me problems, and then change the pressure switch and the pressure tanks, and I'll do all that, while I change one thing out. I might as well change the rest of it and be done with it. Just put brand new tanks in, take these out, and do away with them. Because that right there on the side of the tanks, that tells you the date, I guess back in 2009, close to it. I don't know how long they stayed on the shelves, but that's what the maximum pressure is. That's what the test pressure is that they tested the tanks when they came off the line. And then on this too, I've got power. It goes up to my panel box right here underneath. So if I wanted to cut the power off to my well, I could just cut it off right here instead of going inside the house. Also, if I had a power issue going from there to here, I would check this first, and then if I didn't have power going out of this box, I would go in the house and check the breaker inside. I hope that helps you a little bit. Also, one more thing, if you want to check your tanks out to make sure your tanks are good, you can turn the power off to your well, turn the power completely off, open up some water faucets on the cold side, and drain the whole system down. On the top of these tanks, you've got a little old cap on top of each one of these tanks. I know it's dirty under here. If you take that cap off after they drain completely down, these 20-gallon tanks should have 28 pounds of air pressure in them. If they say 0, you can pump air back into them, but if something's wrong with the bladder, or there's a pinhole in the bladder, it will go out through your faucets. You may start seeing your water start surging, and that means that the air is coming back through your pressure in your house instead of being in the tanks where they belong. If you mash down, it's a little tire gauge is what it is, so you have to use like a little tire gauge to check them. If you mash down on these when you drain them down and water comes out the top of them, if water comes out the top of these tanks, when you mash down on that tire gauge, then the tank is bad. You need to replace the tanks, because if not, you'll be replacing a pump. Because your switch, as soon as you turn the water on, will start cutting off and on. You heard that switch click, but when your tanks are bad and something's not right with the system, it'll sit there and go click, 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 click. So what's happening is your switch is cutting off and on, off and on, off and on, off and on, just like you sitting there turning this light off and on with the switch on the wall. Eventually, if you keep doing that, what happens to the light? It blows, because it can't handle that. The bulbs are rated to a certain extent, and if you keep flicking the power off and on, off and on, off and on, you're going to blow a light switch or a light bulb. Same thing as a well. If that switch keeps flicking on and off, on and off, on and off, and you don't take care of the problem, you're going to burn something up. So I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to put the lid back on my pressure switch. It just kicked off again. I've got water in the house running because I wanted to do this video. But if that gives you some kind of insight and it helps you out, like my channel, subscribe to it. And like I said, guys, I'll get more into detail. I would tell you this: if you're going to do a mobile home or a single wide, these tanks are okay. If you've got a home that has got a crawl space and you ain't got that much room, then I would double up on these tanks. If you've got the room, I would go with a bigger size tank, which is a 44-gallon tank, and have one pressure tank. Like I said, I just doubled up on these because this is, to me, is equivalent to one big tank. That's why I did that. So I hope this helped you out. Leave a comment below. Let me know what's going on, if you have any system problems, or if you need to know something. If I can help you out, I will, and if I can, I'll send you in the direction of somebody that can, or try to get an answer for you. Thank you for watching. I hope you hit like. I hope you subscribe. Have a nice day. It's Sunday, and God bless you.